Hey guys, this is Ben from ashtonmusicacademy.com. I hope you're having a great day, and today I'm going to show you how I make music in my minimalist home studio here in Amsterdam. We're in my living room right now, so I don't have a separate bedroom or a garage or whatever to build a home studio, but I've just set up my stuff here right in my living room. So I'm going to give you a tour, which is not going to be very long. And I'm going to show you what kind of gear I use to record my music, and we're going to dive into one of my sessions, and I'm going to show you how I process everything, what kind of virtual instruments I use, and what simple techniques I use to make the music that I like to make. And I hope this will be helpful to you, because I've been working on this process for almost 15 years now. And I remember when I was starting making music in my bedroom at my parents' house, and I didn't know anything about home recording or recording in general. So I was just basically selecting presets and setting up the microphone, hoping it would sound right. But over the years, I've developed certain techniques and certain methods to get great sounding results with minimal gear and with budget equipment. So I hope you learned something today. So let's just dive into it. So first thing, I'm using a MacBook Pro right here. It's an older model. It's definitely not the newest, but it does the job and it works great. Actually, I'm not even thinking about upgrading. I'm using an AudioFuse what's the name? An Arturia AudioFuse interface, and I've chosen this interface because it is very tiny. It's a small box which has a lid which I can put on top, so I can just throw it into my backpack, but it packs a lot of punch. It has 2 microphone inputs, but I could connect another 8 microphone preamps via ADAT if I need to. So if I would like to record drums or whatever, I could just take my interface to a rehearsal space or a studio or whatever and record drums with my interface. It has a lot of buttons, which I like, because most interfaces nowadays just have a lot of software control. So you have to go into a menu in your computer to turn on the phantom power or to dial everything in, but this has a lot of buttons and it has a lot of inputs and outputs, so I like it. And it has a big knob on top, which is the volume control for the monitors, so that it has a monitor controller built in. So I really like that interface. And then I use the Krk monitors. I've had them for 11 years now, I think. So they are definitely not the newest or the most high-end monitors, but because I've been listening to these monitors for years and years, and I've set them up in different kinds of studio environments, I know them really well. So when I set them up in a new space, I immediately can tell how they react in a certain type of room, and I know what their flaws are going to be. So that's important when you have studio monitors. You don't really have to get the most expensive monitors you can get, but just get a good sounding studio monitors and get to know them really well. And make sure that your room acoustics are great, but most importantly that your studio monitors are set up correctly. All right, so I have a Biodynamic Dt 770 Pro headphones, which I use. They are closed back, so you can use them for recording. I sometimes use them for some late night mixing, but they tend to get really fatiguing quickly because they are closed back. So at some point I would really like to get some open back headphones, but I didn't get to buying a new pair, so I just use them. But they sound great. They are kind of like a standard pair of headphones in most studios. So if I am in another studio and they have these kind of headphones, I know they will sound mostly the same. Then I use this microphone a lot. This is the Rode NT1A. I don't think they really make them anymore, or at least they have a newer model which is called the NT1, which is a different kind of microphone. So it's not like an upgraded type of microphone, but it's supposed to sound better than NT1. But this is also the case where, no, this is definitely not the best microphone you can get. I mean, Neumann's sound much better than these microphones, but I've had this microphone also for about 10, 11 years now, so I know it very well, and I've recorded almost everything with this guy. So when I put this on my voice, I know exactly how it's going to sound like. I know exactly how I need to process my voice. So it's very efficient and very effective to me. And that's important, that you don't need to reinvent everything every time you make a recording, but that you get to know the gear you already own. That's something that I preach very often. So just use whatever you have. And of course, I'd like to upgrade at some time, but I just don't really see the benefit of upgrading. I'd like to get the Slate Digital microphone though. Have you guys checked that out? That's a cool one. That's like a very linear, neutral sounding microphone, but you can put models of expensive microphones in the software on top of it. And I tried that and it sounds really great. So I might at some point upgrade to that microphone, but for now just record my vocals. Oh yeah, and what I do, and this is going to be a very honest confession, you are of course supposed to set this up on a microphone stand, but because my space is so limited here, what I tend to do is I just hold it in my hand. And I do not recommend this to everybody, by the way, but when I need to get an idea down quickly and I don't have the time to set up a microphone stand and stuff, I just put on this foam pop filter, which you use when you are recording radio stuff, for example. So you can get really close to the microphone, and I just record like this. I just hold it in my hand like it's a stage microphone, like it's an SM58, for example, and I just record like this. And I gotta tell you, man, it sounds really good because I get so close to the microphone. The microphone tends to pick up less of the room acoustics. So, of course, I'm not in the treated room right now. I'm just in my living room as we speak. So it just focuses on my voice and it doesn't pick up all kinds of resonances and weird reflections that are in this space. So this works really well. I said, just try it sometime. You might be surprised. Then I use this M Audio keyboard, MIDI keyboard. It's an Oxygen 61. It's not the most expensive one, but I've seen Charlie Puth use this in his home studio, so it's probably good. And what else? Of course, I have a couple of other microphones which I sometimes use. I have a nice ribbon mic. The Golden Age Project ribbon mic I have then Shure SM57 and some drum microphones, but I don't have the space to record drums at the moment, so I don't really use that much. Well, that's about it. So let's dive into a song I've recorded with this gear and in this home studio, and let's see how it sounds like, if you like what you hear. So I'm going to put on my headphones and we're going to take a look in Logic. Well, I use Logic Pro X most of the time. I use Pro Tools sometimes, but Logic Pro X just works great when you're using a lot of virtual instruments, which I used in this session. This song is called Going Back to California, and I actually dreamed about this song. Is that how you pronounce it correctly? I dreamt about this song. Yes. I was dreaming and I heard all the patterns, all the layers. I even heard the lyrics. And this never happened to me before. So the next day when I woke up, as soon as I could, just started laying down these layers which I was hearing in my head before they disappeared. And this is what came out. And it started with this loop I was hearing in my head, which sounds like this. Which is sort of an 808, but I've made it a little bit darker. So I've put on some processing, which this is the virtual mix rack by Slate Digital. And I just added a lot of saturation. I took off a lot of the top end here and here even more. So it just sounds very dark. And then these wood blocks, they are kind of like, this is kind of like the groove in Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing. You know what I'm talking about? Kind of like that, but without the reverb. So this is the base of this. No, it's not the base. It's the foundation of the song. And on top of that, I recorded a piano, which is very atmospheric. So you have the dry drums in the middle, but then you have this very wide and dreamy piano. And I used the Valhalla virtual, the Valhalla vintage verb on top of it. Just straight on the channel, I don't use a sense. So, yeah, this is the processing I use. So very basic stuff. And then I just started layering it. I recorded a bass, which is just a sample. It's just the Stinger bass in Logic Pro X. But the key to programming virtual instruments is not that you use the most realistic samples or the most expensive ones, but that you play it like you would play a real instrument, a real bass in this instance. So I play a keyboard, but in my head I'm playing a real bass guitar. And that is very important, because if you do it like that and you make it sound correct, then it will create the illusion that it's a real instrument. So in the track, it just sounds like a real bass guitar would, but on its own you definitely hear that it's a sample. This is the bass on its own. So it's a bit sterile, but in the track it disappears. Then I recorded a acoustic guitar just with my Rode microphone. Also processed it a bit. And a lot of the stuff I do when I'm processing is I'm adding a lot of color and a lot of character. So this is the virtual drive, or the FG73, which is like a Neve preamp. So I add some drive, then I add the virtual channel. So it's a lot of subtle stuff, but it makes it sound a little bit more analog, because I record very sterile. So it's just my microphone going into a very clean sounding audio interface with the clean microphone preamp, but I can make it sound however I like in the software. So that's what I like. And then I just added a little bit mid-range, a little bit more weight, some compression. I'm just going through this quickly so you can get an idea. Then I layered the acoustic guitar. So what I hope you will take away from this video is that it's not really about using the most expensive gear or recording in a professional studio, but that if you make a great arrangement, if you have a good song, if you know how to work these virtual instruments, you can make it sound pretty good, I'd say. So let's continue. The next layer is an electric guitar, which is the THU Slate Edition. And this sounds amazing. This guitar plugin is using impulse responses, which are kind of camper-like. It's not a camper which you use to go on vacation, but it's a camper with the K. For the non-guitarists out there, it's a box which you can put impulse responses of amplifiers inside of, and this is kind of the software equivalent of that. And this emulates a Fender Champ amp, which sounds amazing. It's very realistic. So I used that along with the Valhalla Vintage Verb again, and a little bit of processing. I'm only high passing. So my workflow is that I record stuff, but I mix along the way. So while I'm creating the song, I already am mixing. So it's not like I record everything very dry and then I start mixing, because then I lose the moment. When I'm in this creative zone, I like to put my stamp on it. I like to make it sound however I like and build the mix as I go. So when I'm done with the song, the mix is also done for about 90%, I'd say. So that makes it very efficient and very quick. Well, let's continue. Let's see, I added an organ part. Which gives it a little bit width. So I really think about what kind of function is this instrument fulfilling in the song. Which part is it playing? Is it adding something, or is it taking away? So I try to play as least as possible so the song can breathe. So I like to make the vocals stand out of the mix. All right, so vocals. Let's talk about vocals. I added vocals using my famous recording method with the handheld condenser mic.
Dark and cold, and I am told that I can't make it work when the fire in my heart is out and nothing's left to burn. There's a hideaway, a getaway, it's calling me by name.
So let's take a look at how it sounds without any processing. Okay, so I'm going to solo the vocal and I'm going to disable any processing, and then it sounds like this.
It's a place where I can settle down, where I can start again.
So let's go to the verse
I
again.
can't make it work when the fire in my heart is out and nothing's left to burn. There's a hideaway, a getaway, it's calling me by.
So it's a very dry vocal, nothing interesting. But when I add the processing, which isn't really weird stuff, it's just basic processing. I'm going to show you in a minute. It sounds like this.
It's a place where I can settle down, where I can start again.
So this way, if you do it like I do right here, you'll be able to elevate a simple home studio recording, nothing fancy, but you'll be able to elevate it to a professional sounding vocal, in my opinion. So the backing vocals are kind of processed the same way. They sound like this.
I'm going back to California.
Just like that. It also comes down to arrangement. So I use a double for the lead vocal, which sounds like this.
That's where I need to be.
But then I add a harmony, which I also double, and then pan to left and right, which creates a lot of width and contrast when you compare it to the verses, for example.
I'm going back to where I wandered.
So they sound like that. So they're very upfront and very intelligible. So you can hear every word correctly. So now let's go to the drums for a minute, because I just produced this song very quickly and I didn't go to a recording studio to record drums. I can't put a drum kit in my living room in this Amsterdam apartment, because then the entire neighborhood gets mad. So I just programmed the drums. Now, what did I use? I used just the basic Logic drums, but I am a drummer, I must say. So if you're not a drummer, this is a little bit more difficult, and I recommend asking a drummer friend to program it for you, because so I know how the part is supposed to sound like. So that makes it easier. Again, it's not about using the most expensive virtual instruments, but it's about playing them on a MIDI keyboard like you would play a real instrument, or a real drum kit in this instance. And it sounds like this. So yes, of course, it sounds a little bit programmed, and I've added some samples which add to that, but in the mix it sounds like this.
Going back to California, that's where I need.
Oops, overloading the system here. It happens all the time in Logic. When you use too many plugins, or sometimes you have a plugin that's not working correctly. So excuse me if that happens in this session.
I'm going back to where I wandered.
So when you add everything together, you get this band, you get this backing track, you get the song. And that's what I'm going for. I'm going not for the most perfect recording. I'm not going for the most normal sounding recording. I don't want it to sound good. I want it to sound like the song. I want it to sound like me. So this is what you can do with just some basic equipment. And the processing plays a huge part in this. Excuse me. So one thing I'd like to go into is the mix bus processing real quickly, because this is also very important. Without the mix bus processing, the song sounds like this.
About who I'm gonna be, so that's where I'm gonna be.
So it sounds fine, but with the mix bus processing, it sounds like this. Let's go to the chorus again.
Oh yeah, that's where I need to be.
So there's a lot of weight added, there's a lot of color added, and it's just becomes more together. So what do I do? I use the virtual mix bus to make it sound like it's going through an analog console. Nothing special, just turn up the drive a little bit so it adds color and cohesiveness. Then I compress a little bit with the FG Red compressor by Slate Digital, just medium fast compression. This is like the Chris Lord Algae compressor, which he uses on his mix bus, and it's basically the same setting. So it makes the drums really slam, and it compresses the entire mix when you mix into it instead of adding it later on. And then I add more compression, but this is slower compression. It's put to 30 milliseconds attack, an auto release, and a ratio of 2:1. So this adds just a little bit of compression.
I'm going back to where I wandered.
The needle is barely moving at all. It's mainly for the color of the SSL compressor, which also adds a lot of weight. Then I add more color and a little bit of low end with a pull tag equalizer by Waves. By the way, one little trick I want to share with you. If you overload this plugin, if you drive this needle into the red, it adds a lot of harmonic content, which makes the song really pop out. So in some cases I might do that if it adds just a little bit more of more. And then I add the virtual tape machine set to 30 inch per second tape speed, half inch 2-track tape machine. So this also makes the low end really sound round and full.
How do I'm gonna be? So that's where I'm gonna be.
This is one of my favorite plugins. I put this on all my songs. And then to finalize everything, I use the Ozone mastering processor, and I just used a preset which sounded great. I think it's the Krk General Clarity preset, and I might have tweaked it a little bit so it adds some mid-range, which I thought made the song really jump out of the speakers. Then it uses a little bit of multi-band compression. If this all looks like some magic, don't worry about it. Just leave a comment below and ask me questions and I'll get back to you. And then finally, I'll just use a little bit of limiting. So that's about it. So this video is probably very long by now. So I imagined you have a lot of questions and a lot of things come up when you take a look at this video. So if you have any questions whatsoever, just leave a comment down below. And don't forget to press the like button if you thought this video was helpful in any way. If you want to see more of this content, just let me know and press that thumbs up button, because that really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Then it shows my videos to more people, and that's really helpful to me. Also, because you've stuck with me all the way to the end of this video, I have a free gift for you, and it's called the Home Studio Jumpstart Guide. In this guide, I share the 5 home studio essentials with you. I talk to you about what kind of gear you need, and I show you like exact equipment that you could go out and get. And if you have that equipment, you basically have everything you need to start making great professional sounding music right in your home studio. And I give you some tips and helpful advice. So you can download that guide for free by going to ashtonmusicacademy.com/jumpstart or by clicking the link below in the description. So again, that's ashtonmusicacademy.com/jumpstart or click the link in the description. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this long video, and I hope to see you again next week in another video. Bye.